In this video, we're comparing Märklin K-track with PECO Streamline combined with Erbert bands of center contacts.
Hello and welcome to another video tutorial and welcome to my new layout room. This in front of me here is the new benchwork, or at least a part of it. It's I would say 1/3. It's an open frame style benchwork I've constructed for the layout. The total construction time for this third was just 2 days. So 1 day to acquire materials, buy all the plywood, the screws and everything, and then 2 days for the construction work. So you might think that, oh, I don't want to do the bench work, I'd rather buy a table or just have a plywood or something. Forget that. The bench work is a fast process. It takes a few days and then you can build on your model railroad for years. So don't worry about the bench work. What I'm a bit more worried about then is the Märklin K-tracks. This layout will be built on using a Märklin K-track system. This is a track system which was, I would say, designed back in the, I don't know, 80s or something, so it's very old. So what we're going to do today is to check. I'm going to compare PECO Code 100 tracks, their Streamline series, with the Pukoband. That is a kind of center contact which you assemble underneath the PECO track, and then voila, you have a 3-rail system. There are several advantages with this. One of them is the most obvious, and that is the better appearance, because the PECOs, the center contacts, they come up in between the ties. So instead of having the contacts in the ties, which totally ruins the appearance of the ties, they stick up through the ballast. So much better look. But also when buying the PECO tracks, I like working with the PECO tracks more than the Merklin tracks. One of the benefits with the PECO tracks is that they stay. So if you bend the flex track to a radius, it stays like that. The Merklin track, like boing, springs back. So the Merklin track is more demanding a laying than the PECO track. And also the PECO track is much more prototypic, meaning the dimensions of the rails and ties and everything is much more close to what you would expect to see out in real life. So there are several advantages. As well as lower cost. Actually, the PECO track is half in price compared to Merklin, so big difference of course. But after all, in the end, it all gotta work. I mean, otherwise it's no use. If I have half the cost and a better looking track, but no trains will run, then, well, that's not the layout I want. So today, we're going to compare these two. I will lay tracks, both using the PECO plus Pukoband and K-track, both turnouts and flex tracks in different radius, etc., to really figure out what does this really look like. How does it really work with different brands of locomotives, not just Merklin, but also we will try out Rocco, PECO and Gecko locos in the test here. So very interesting. Let's get started.
What surprised me a bit was that these Pukobands from Erbert comes in rolls like this. That in practice means that the entire Pukoband is bent everywhere and needs to be bent back to a flat position, which of course adds a lot of extra work to the assembly. Plus, once you bend something, you bend it back and then it also becomes longer. The material itself is 0.65 millimeter thick, so it will add to the thickness of the track. So now I've done my best here to flatten the Pukoband out, and well, this is what it looks like then. I don't know, it doesn't tell what the material is of the Pukoband. It was not tinned, because then it would have been easier to solder to it, and I had to use solder paste to do that. Anyway, it fits quite well under the PECO Code 100, and this is what it looks like. All of the center rail tabs are sticking up. So let's prepare the sub roadbed for this track. I'm starting with the 20 centimeter straight section, and then without transition I go over to a 432 millimeter curve, 15 degrees. I typically always use this track bed. It's Woodland Xenix ST1474. It's kind of a plastic soft road bed, and you can split it like this. So once you have a curve, you need to split it, because the inner part will of course be longer than the outer part, and then you get some mismatch and wrinkles unless you don't do that. So here I have divided the curved part, including the straight which leads up to the curve, and then you can see here that there's a difference of about 5 to 7 millimeters in length between inner and outer. Then I tried to bend this Pukoband also to same type of curve there, the 432 millimeter, and then add the PVA glue. This is just the standard wood glue, Cola Blanca or Kanal in Germany. I had quite a thick layer of glue, so it will be enough both to fix the Pukoband, which goes into the glue here. Try to avoid getting glue on top of it though. And then I place the PECO Streamline flex track. This one's got item number SL100 on top. And then as weight to keep both the track and the Pukoband down on the roadbed, I'm using full cans of either soda cans or in this case beer. I find this to be a very good solution compared to clamps, screws or anything else. It's a good weight and it distributes perfectly. Now let's cut the Pukoband, and then here we also need to cut the rail and as well as two of the ties here. The rail, because we bent the curve further up this flex track, so then of course the one rail will be longer than the other, and the ties are taken away because we will need to add rail joiners here. I use a motor grinder to cut and trim the rail. Lastly, I add rail joiners, so by that we're ready to add the turnout here. And it will be a PECO SL89. Here's the matching center rail kit from Erbert. It is some kind of clamps which are joined together by a copper thread. The clamps look like this. They have the same thickness as the Pukoband, so that's good. But this here is an extra thickness which sticks out underneath. I'm kind of skeptic to that because it's very important to assemble turnouts flat to the track bed to avoid problems, and this will add height on one side only. Another thing that worries me about this design is that the clips are made from one kind of metal, and the copper thread which we're adding to join these electrically is made obviously from copper, and doing that creates a galvanic difference, because the voltage potential between the copper and whatever metal they have in the clips here will create galvanic corrosion. So this is not a very good solution for long term, especially considering that we'll add a lot of glue and water into this. So that is also least to say worrying. Now when assembling the turnout you should be sure to not have any glue under the mechanism there. And same as earlier, I'm using my beer cans here as a weight. And then I'm adding the straight section and also the curved one on the other side of the turnout, and some more beer cans. Lastly, I'm checking that this straight section here actually is straight. It's a bit hard to see with the beer cans on top, but with the steel scale next to it you can do that. Alright, then we're ready to assemble also the Märklin K-track. I'm doing that next to the PECO track with the Pukoband to have a side-by-side comparison. While we're waiting for the roadbed to dry for the Märklin K-track, we were gonna connect electrically the flex track with the turnout here on the PECO side, and it seems to work fine there, no problem. You can also see that the ties are hanging a bit in the air above the roadbed due to the center contacts which are building downwards. So I'm adding a bit of flux, soldering flux here to the metal part, I'll say the Pukoband, and then I solder these together. Then we're ready to connect our central station, so I do that, and then I have connected the other end of that cable to a socket, and to that socket I then connect the cables going to the tracks, and ultimately I solder the cables to the track. Now we're ready to run the locomotive. I'm trying out with this reliable partner. It's Merklin 37529. This one runs everywhere without any issue at all. So this is a good starting locomotive. So I'm getting it now. It's reading, signing into the CS3, selecting that, dragging it into the controller. And then, alright, off we go. It seems to work pretty fine. The sound from the locomotive is a bit more sharp than on the Märklin K-track. And it seems to run, now, there it stops. It's somewhere, it's the flanges that hits the center contacts in the turnout. So I will adjust those a bit. Oh, and it stops again. So let's check the in turnout position. Okay, then it stops again. What is the problem? I don't know. I just push a bit back and forth to see if it can pass through. Now here's short circuits. Yeah, it short circuits to the rail there because the Pukos are not tall enough. Okay, now I think that the reliability of this system with separate Pukos leaves a whole lot more to wish for. But let's at least have a check on the optical performance of it. So I'm adding ballast here using a ballaster tool, and then I'm knocking on the rails to get the ballast to compress in between the ties, and then I use a vacuum cleaner on low pressure to remove excess ballast, and then it looks like this. So now you can see the Pukos in between the ties here standing up through the ballast. Next up is to spray the entire ballast with alcohol. This time I'm using isopropanol. So I'm spraying, I'm actually wetting the entire ballast so it's kind of soaked with alcohol. And in this bottle, it's an eyedropper. I have a 50-50 mix of PVA glue, wood glue, and water. So I'm adding that, and you can see due to the alcohol I've added with the sprayer, it floats beautifully all around the ties and glues all the ballast down. So this is what it looks like when still wet. Now we'll leave this to dry, and meanwhile I'm also doing the same ballasting procedure for the K-track. Once both the K-track and the PECO with Pukoband has dried, I'm airbrushing. This is burnt umber brown on all four sides of the rails. Now, of course, every rail only have two sides, but of course you understand, both on right and left. After that, I add additional amount of black into the color mix, and I spray now just on the rail sides. So the rail sides will have a slightly darker color than the surrounding ballast. All right, so that's the methodology I'm using when I'm coloring my ballast. And this is what they look like. This is the PECO with the Pukoband. Unfortunately, it doesn't work all that well, but it actually looks pretty nice. So one can't say anything about it. The picture I've seen on Instagram is in gray ballast on modern concrete ties, and then it looks even better. And this is the Märklin K-track. So a bit more visible center contacts here. The Pukos are sticking up and gives its classic Merklin appearance. Well, I can live with the trade-off having it like this compared to the poor functionality and a lot more work with the Pukoband.
All right. I didn't find it meaningful to perform all the testing of these two track systems I intended, since this with the Pukoband. No, I must say I'm a bit disappointed. I bought plenty of it to use for the first part of the layout here, because I had high hopes. I've seen a lot of postings on Instagram and also on Facebook for this Pukoband and how fantastic it looks. But obviously it's not really up to standard when it comes to functionality. So a big disappointment there, I must say. But anyway, that made me, well, set me along the line to just go for the Märklin K-track on this layout throughout all the parts, actually. So I will not be using this, and I cannot recommend any of you doing that either. And please note that this video is not in any way sponsored by anyone. It's a test I made myself. I spent like 170 euros on materials, and this video will play and give income like 20 euro, because that's typically what they do. So it's it's not a good business for me. But please, if you like the content I'm providing, if you feel that you have use for it, please support the channel, support my next project, helping me, helping you. Get on to Patreon. Set up a support account there from $1, $2, $4, $20 per month, or make a one-off donation using the PayPal dialog found in the video description below. And if you're not yet a subscriber, subscribe, enable this little bell, and you will get notification once the next video gets published. Until that happens, see ya.